some people who are joining us from other parts of the world. Today, we've got another interesting session, and as you can see, it's not the usual, the Power BI just doing stuffs on the Power BI desktop that most of us are used to. So today, we've got one of those things you need to be very knowledgeable on, and every serious BI role, they will expect you to be very, very good in SQL. So we are very fortunate to have another MVP presenting to us today. And as you can see, she's in already. So we've got Deepthi Goguri, and we're going to learn a lot from her. She's based in the US, and she's a veteran of this space. So this session is brought to you by your BizEdge and MHS Analytics. And your BizEdge is a Microsoft Excel, Power BI, SQL, financial modeling, consulting, and training company based in Nigeria. So if you have training needs, consulting needs, you will do well to reach out to us. And I'm going to share a link to some of our free and premium resources. So if you're taking the Advanced Financial Modeler exam, you can use our free mock exam. You can download our financial modeling template, access some of our free courses, and if you think you want the premium paid ones, feel free to use them. MHS Analytics is our Canadian entity, same services, but providing, covering clients based in North America and Europe. So in case you've got friends, clients, partners that you feel they would be better served by our North American entity, then for sure, reach out to us. And now to the main part of today's session. I'm going to share our LinkedIn, and I think I've got a Twitter link to. I will share it. So Deepthi is a SQL Server Database Administrator. She's also a Microsoft MVP in the data platform. She's a Microsoft certified trainer. She's got a lot of certifications in the data management and analytics space. So we're going to benefit a lot from our wealth of experience. If you are me, you should pay attention and ask questions, so that you get that special aspect of learning that comes from the authority giving you answers to your specific questions. I'll share a blog. She blogs at dbanuggets.com, and she is also someone who runs a user group like we have, but hers is based in the US. So she's a co-organizer for the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group, and also a data platform, diversity, equity, and inclusion virtual group. She is a volunteer for the data platform Women in Technology user group. So she's someone who is community oriented, and she loves arts and crafts. Fortunately, we might not get to hear from her about the arts and crafts, but we're going to hear a lot about the SQL and how you two can do a lot of amazing and artistic stuff with SQL. So I'm going to hand over to her so that she has the full hour, and then we can really learn from her. So Deepthi, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you have all the time that you need. It's an honor to have you. Okay. You might need to unmute yourself. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll share my screen.
We see it now. Thanks.
Okay, are you able to see my screen in the presentation mode?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to present at the Power BI Office Server user group. And I'm so honored to be here, but I'm like a little bit surprised by myself. Like, I'm sure you will be surprised as well. We are in the Power BI user group, but why we are seeing SQL Server 2022 on the screen. But I think behind the scenes for the Power BI, you will be using the queries. So it's always good to know the latest and greatest features from SQL Server 2022. If you are in the old versions of SQL Server, it is very good to upgrade your SQL servers, right? So I know database administrators will be taking care of that part, but with the latest features, we have advanced features where a couple of based upon the performance. If you are using Power BI, then definitely if you are running your queries, those queries needs to be run perfectly fine. Like the performance needs to be good. So SQL Server 2022 offers some features which are really helpful. Like all you have to do is like upgrade your database to SQL Server 2022, and you can take these advantage of these features. And today in this session, we are going to talk about those features. So I'm not going to talk much about on this slide because Michaela has already talked about it. All that I wanted to say is like it would be very nice to connect with you later. Like if you are not much comfortable to ask me questions here on this platform, you can definitely contact me later on Twitter or on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn and as well as Twitter, so you can ask me questions there. So as an agenda, today we are going to talk about the SQL Server latest features, right? Some of the features are already there before SQL Server 2022, but they have been improvised in 2022, SQL 2022. So we are going to talk about one of the features is Query Store, and it got introduced. This feature actually got introduced in SQL 2016, but they have been adding more advancements to it, and the latest advancement is Query Store hints. So if you know about the query hints, these are similar to that, where like if your store procedure is not working fine, like you usually use the query hints like recompile or like um to use certain CPU or like parallelism, or like you can add several options. We have several options to use in the query hints. As an example, I said like to as an example, I gave some of the examples, but there are like several query hints that you can find. But then this is a little bit different. This comes with the query store where you will be using the hints um, inserted into the query store procedure designed for the query store. So we are going to talk about that, and we are going to talk about parameter sensitive plan optimization, which is also known as PSP optimization. This is also a addition in SQL Server 2022, and all the rest of them, which you are seeing like memory grant feedback, DOP feedback, degree of parallelism feedback, and cardinality estimation feedback. So all of these features, right, that you are seeing here, the last three features, the last memory grant feedback, DOP feedback, and cardinality estimate feedback, all of these three feedbacks require the query store to be turned on. So before SQL Server 2022, your databases doesn't have to be um, enabled with the query store. It is not a necessary, but from SQL Server 2022, they made all the databases, newly created databases, or by default, they have the query store turned on. But if you are migrating your old databases to the SQL Server 2022, then it won't make any change. Like if you want to use query store, you can, but if you want to keep like that, you can do that. But any newly created databases will definitely have query store enabled by default. So since they are in SQL Server 2022 and by default this option is enabled, all the bottom three features require query store to be turned on. The only advanced feature that doesn't require the query store to be turned on is parameter sensitive plan optimization, which is also known as PSP optimization. So most of these features require query store to be turned on. We need to know something about query store, right? We need to know how the query store actually works to um, to to think like how these features will take those advantage. We need to know something about query store, the basics of the query store. So as an overview, like I said, like Query Store got introduced in SQL Server 2016, and basically what it does is it will collect the queries. Like once the feature is turned on, it will start collecting your queries into a query store. Like once you enable the query store on the database, all the queries and all the information that it will be capturing, it will be saved inside the database itself like on the primary data file of the database. You cannot change that location. So once it starts collecting, it will start collecting that information over time. So let's say related to the Power BI, you are running a query, your or like a data refresh you have, it is keep on running and it is throwing a timeout error. Definitely, I have seen in the Power BI as well, like whenever we run the queries, direct query, uh, it keeps on running and it throws an error. So in that scenario, if you have this query store turned on, you can talk to the developer to look into to look into the query store and see like how this query was running before and what has suddenly changed, because your query was running perfectly fine and suddenly it has thrown the timeout error. Now you can go back and see the execution plan of the query and how the query was working fine, and what was the resources that it was using before, and what is the current execution, like why is it taking so much time. And side by side you can compare both of these executions and see what is the difference, whether the plan has completely changed, or like whether it is taking more resources, or what is going on, right? So now you may ask like, okay, now I know that the current execution plan is not working fine, but the older one was working fine. What can I do now? Can I make something like, can I go ahead and force the last execution that was working fine? And then do not worry about like changing the code to make it work faster, because the query itself is running faster before, right? So in that scenario, by using the query store, you can take the advantage and you can force that last good execution plan so that next time your report runs, it will always use that new execution plan instead of the one that is not working fine, right? So that is one of the advantage that you have with the query store. You can collect the queries over time, and you can go back in time and see how it used to work, and then make the changes based upon that. That is just one advantage. But in the SQL Server 2022, an additional advantage was like, you do not have to manually go ahead and force the good plan. It will automatically does that for you. You do not have to worry like looking into the queries whether the current one is working fine or the old execution was working fine. If you are in the enterprise edition of SQL Server or you are in the Azure, this feature is automatically enabled. So the advancement to this feature is the query store will automatically go ahead and look out for your queries if they are not performing well now. But if they used to perform well last time, then it will always make sure it is forcing that last good plan. And then it will keep on monitoring until it finds the better one. If it finds the better one, then it will go ahead and force that plan. But if it is not working fine, the new plan is not working fine, it will always make sure it is forcing the last good plan. So that's one of the other advancement that we have with query store. So the diagram that you are seeing in front of me is like um, how the query is actually processed behind the scenes in SQL Server. And if that particular query is a part of the query store database, and if we forced a plan on that query, how will that plan works? Like how will that query works? The query, whenever it executes on the SQL Server, it will create a plan. And as a part of the query store, I can go ahead and force that plan. Now, imagine we are running a query and that query, I already forced a plan on that query. Now, how it will work behind the scenes. Now, any query which executes on the SQL Server, the first thing that the SQL Server will check is like whether that query is running for the first time. Now, if that query is running for the first time, like if you build a report and then you have a direct query, and that query is running for the first time from that report, right? Then it will go ahead and do the compilation and optimization phase to build an execution plan for that. So the first time that you pull up the report, it might take some time because that is the first time it is running. So it will build an execution plan. But if that query is not running for the first time, then there might be the plan inside the cache already for that query. In that phase, it will go ahead and use that plan from the cache. But if there is no plan in the cache, there are several reasons why there will be no plan in the cache, even though the query is running multiple times. Is like, for example, when there is a memory pressure on the server, right? There is low memory on the server, and all of these reports are running continuously, they're refreshing, using the resources, and all of it. Now, if the SQL Server is having trouble to get more memory because it's out of the memory, the first thing that it will do is it will go ahead and clear out the plans from the cache. The old plans, which are not being used much, it will first flush out those so that it will clear out the space for the new queries to come in. So if that query is not in the cache, then again it will go through the compilation optimization phase to build the new plan. But if the plan is already in the cache, then all right, it will go ahead and take that plan from the cache. But before moving forward, it will do a simple check. And this check happens when you are using the query store and when you force that query, if you force a plan for that query. In that phase, it will go ahead and check for the recompilation. Now, what it will do is it will check whether that plan that it took from the cache or whether it newly built, is it similar to the plan that we forced? So the plan that we forced is already saved in the cache, right? Now, now we build a new plan or we took the plan from the cache. It will make a comparison between this plan and the forced plan, whether they both are exactly the same. Now, if it is not the same, sometimes the SQL Server can create a new plan, entirely new plan, which is not comparable with the forced plan. Now, for example, if somebody changed, if somebody changed some indexes which are used inside the execution plan, and we have already forced that plan, then there will be differences and SQL Server will have to create a new plan. Now, if it is not the same, if it is not similar to the forced plan, then it will go ahead and apply the forced plan. Forcibly, it will apply the forced plan. Now, if it is same as the forced plan, then already it will move ahead, right? So before the query goes to the execution phase, the query text and query plan will be saved inside the plan store. So there is something you need to remember is like whenever you enable the query store on the database, there are two stores that will get enabled inside the cache. One is plan store and there are other is runtime start store. So query text and query plan will be first pushed into this plan store, which got created when you enable the query store, and then the query gets executed. The query doesn't have to be executed to save the query text and query plan inside the cache. So that is the reason like that thing will happen first, and then the query will go to the execution phase. Now, after the query executes, then it will collect the runtime stats, like what are the statistics, like to the how much CPU, how much memory, what all that information. It will go ahead and save that after the query executes into the runtime stat store. And this process happens asynchronously. And for for every certain amount of interval, all of this collected data in the cache will be pushed out to the disk. Now, by default, it takes 15 minutes to flush out all of this data that is being collected onto the query store schema. And this schema is inside the primary data file of the database itself, where you enable the query store, right? So this process will happen asynchronously as well. And that's how the query store will run behind the scenes. So now you might be having a question like, but uh, but as a Power BI developer, like if I have some problem, I approach the DBA and they will always look out for the query for the plan cache. Like what is the execution plan? Why is this Power BI report taking long time? What sort of a query is running? And to investigate what is going on with the query, right? The like DBAs will always look for the plan cache. Now, when we already have a plan cache where we can look out for the plan, now why do we have to enable query store? that can be a question. But there are certain differences. Is like by using the plan cache, whenever you restart the SQL Server, everything is lost. Like from the cache, everything is lost. So if a SQL Server restarted, if the SQL Server is restarted and you are running a Power BI report and using a direct query, then it might take some time because the SQL Server just started and it don't have a plan in the cache. So it have to run and build a plan and then pull up the report, pull up the results. So it might take time. But with the query store, it will retain it will retain the data until you do some cleanup policy. Whenever you enable the query store, you also enable the cleanup policy. By default, it is 30 days. So as soon as you approach 30 days, the old data will be deleted, not the new data. So with the plan cache, you can only see the latest plan. Like if your query run 180 days ago, right? That plan might not be in the cache anymore. So it can only pull the latest plans. And by using the query store, you can actually collect the data over time. And with the plan cache, like I said, like whenever there is a memory pressure on SQL Server, the first thing that happens is like it will remove the plans from the cache so that it will free up some space. But with the query store, until it reaches the flush out intervals, it won't push all the data that is being collected in the memory into the disk. So with the plan cache, it is really difficult to know why your plan has changed. Like if your Power BI report is working so weird, it was running pretty much good last night, but something happened in the during the night and morning we got the failure like timeout error and we don't know why. But when we look into the cache, we can only pull up the latest plan. Now as a DBA, I cannot pull up the plan that was working fine last night because it might not be there anymore in the cache, right? Because all I can do is like pull up the plans that are recently used. So by using the query store, I have the ability to go back in time, even like 1 week ago or 10 days ago, I can go ahead and pull that information. So it will become easier to do the troubleshooting. Now, couple of advancements that we have in SQL Server 2022 is, like I said, the query store is enabled by default in SQL Server 2022. But if you are migrating your old databases to the new environments, you can either have an option to enable query store or just put it as is so that the query store is not enabled. But it is highly recommended to enable your query store because there is an availability where you can easily track what has changed and benefit out of that feature. So in Query Store 2022, what they did was they added the internal limits for your ad hoc workloads. So if your Power BI is not using a store procedure, but instead it is running a directly a query, random query it is running instead of using a store procedure, then that is called as an ad hoc query. And these ad hoc queries can be stored inside the query store, and that might blow up the query store pretty fast. That might fill up the query store data pretty fast, is because like each ad hoc query will have a different query ID. And since it is having a different query ID and you are passing in a different parameter from your Power BI, it will allocate in each time it runs, it will allocate a new query ID, which might store in the query store and it might blow away. Like if your query runs like 10 times a minute or so, let's say as an example, then it might quickly fill up the query store data. So in SQL Server 2022, they added an internal memory limit. Hey, if for the ad hoc workloads, just use this much amount of memory, and once reaches that memory, do not capture anything. It's like that. And the other advantage is query store hints, which I'm going to show you in my demo. So let me show you how the query store hints works. So I'm connecting to my Azure SQL database. So if you are in the SQL Server 2022 enterprise edition of SQL Server, or if you are in the Azure SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, then um, you can use the query hints. You can take the advantage of the query hints. But like I would like to show you how this actually query hints works. So here I am using AdventureWorks database, and so before query store query store hints are there, how would you use the query hints? As an example, I have placed it here. You will just run your query and then use the option and use the hints this way. Option, maybe use recompile and use hint, and then mention the hint here. These are the query hints itself, not the query store hints, but these are the query hints that you can use in any version of SQL Server, right? But what is it with the SQL Server 2022? Let's do that with let's just start with a simple store procedure that I'm going to build here. Is all I'm doing here is like I'm selecting from a table inside this database, AdventureWorks 2022 database, and I'm searching on the product ID at product ID, right? Um, I'm I'm checking if that store procedure is already there and dropping it off if it is there and creating it again. So I have to run in the database. When I'm running in Azure SQL database, I need to select that. And then I will go ahead and clear out the query store. I just create that the stored procedure, but before starting this session, I practiced some of it. So I'll clear out my query store, and also I'll clear out my procedure cache. Do not do this in production, because what this option does is it will clear out all the plans, execution plans for your for your store procedures. It will completely wipe that off. So the next time you run, it will take some time to generate a plan and produce the results. So it is not good. Do not do this in production. I'm just clearing out the query store, but I will also show you how the query store will look like. So now what I will do is like I will run this simple store procedure that we just created, right? We just created the store procedure, and we are running these two executions. So why only these parameters is because these two parameters are very sensitive, meaning like with one parameter we get like some thousands of record, and the other parameter we just get some hundreds of records. So let me execute this and show you how the results look like by enabling the actual execution plan on. This is the actual execution plan on. So I enabled that and I executed. Now I'll show you the results. Now if you see the first one and see the results, 360,000 records. But the second execution just gave me 385 records. Now did you see how much of a difference of output? So for the first one, after creating the store procedure, I executed this first, right? So it chose to do the clustered index scan. And if you hover your mouse, like we got like 360,000 records, and that's why it chose to scan the entire index. But in the second one, but the second execution, we just got 385 rows. We do not have to, it doesn't have to use this execution plan, the same execution plan. But the thing with SQL Server is like whenever you create a store procedure and when you run the first execution, and if the parameter is not good parameter, like example, this 870 parameter produce like 360,000 records. But let's say rest all the parameters will only give me like 300 to 400 records, let's say. But this is an outlier. Only this parameter have those many records, but rest all of them will have like 300 to 400. But imagine like when the first time I execute, it creates an execution plan, which is this, and it will save this plan in the cache. And the next time you run with any parameter, it will go ahead and use the same plan from the cache, because this plan was saved in the cache. The next time It doesn't have to do the scan of entire index, but still it used the same execution plan because it is saved in the cache. That's the problem. So, but it doesn't have to scan the whole thing just to get 385 records. So, now what is the solution for this, right? We just want we just want the executions based upon the parameters, not based upon the plan in the cache. Now, what is the resolution for this? If we are not using query store, then the only option we have is to go ahead and do recompile each time you run the store procedure, so that it will always create the execution plan and then produce the results. But is that a good way? It will take more resources to build the execution plan, right? It will take resources and it will take time, and your report will run slowly to produce the results. That's not a good thing. So what it will do is, by using this query store hints, you can run certain views on the top of this SQL Server database, and you can use the query store design store procedures to use these hints. Now, all you need is you need to know the query ID and what kind of hint you want to use. Those are the only two things you need. But let me show you how the query store looks like. Um, we are using the AdventureWorks database, right? This is the AdventureWorks database. This is the Azure SQL database. So once I refresh, anytime you enable the query store, you will get a folder name as query store. Now expand that and see top resource consuming queries. All we did was we just executed these two store procedures, like one store procedure with two different parameters. Now I'll go ahead and right click view top resource consuming queries. And this is like a bar graph, just the way you see in the Power BI, but I want to see in the table view. So in the grid format. So you need to press this button so to see it in the grid format. So did you observe, like we created just one store procedure? It is not an ad hoc query, it is a store procedure. So that is the reason you are seeing just one query ID with the query ID one, and then it executed this store procedure. And this is a query text. And if you see, there is only one plan got generated, and that plan is clustered index scan. Did you observe, like two parameters we used, but the one that got saved inside the plan cache, the second execution also used the same store procedure, right? Now, this is how it will look like. Like if you want to force the plan, like I said, one of the advantage of query store is to force the plan, right? Now you can click on that and then you can click on force plan here. It will ask you, do you want to force a plan? And if you click yes, it will force the plan. But that is not what I'm doing here. So I will show you how the query hints will work. So by running this query and filtering the text of the query itself, the query text of the store procedure, we can grab the query ID. So the query ID is one for that query. Now, if you see the top resourcing consuming queries in the query store, you also find the query ID for that object. Object is nothing but the store procedure. So the query ID one. Now, by using that query ID, what I will do is like I will use the store procedure sp query store set hint store procedure, give the query ID one and the value as recompile. Now, because we are getting the same execution plan for both of them, I want to use the option recompile so that it will sniff the parameter and it will create this new store procedure. Now, I'll do that for this particular store procedure. I will execute that. Now I'll go ahead and run the same executions again and see the execution plan now. Now, if you see the execution plan, it is changed because it recompiled. The first one, it thought like, hey, these are like 360,000 records. I need to scan the entire index. Good. But for the second one, we got 365 records. It felt like I will recompile this. We do not have to scan the entire index. Index seek and key lookup is good. Now, that's how the automatic, the query store hints will work. It is very beneficial. By using the query store hints, you can actually do a lot of things. Now, for example, I would like to, instead of doing the um, recompile, I would like to use the max top one. So max top one, it will make sure it will use the one CPU for running this particular store procedure. So let me go ahead and do that, execute, and then I can clear out my cache just to make sure, and I will run the store procedures again with the same parameters, right? Now let's see how it will work. Now, if you see the execution plan, now it used the same clustered index scan again, because if you observe, I did not use the recompile. The next time I updated maxtop, right? Updated maxtop only. So the previous recompile option will go away. It will only use maxtop one. That's the reason, like once it created the clustered index scan, it also used the same one. It did not recompile because the moment we updated the hint, it overrides the previous one. So now it used the maxtop one, but how do you confirm the it is using the maxtop one from here? Now, if I go to the properties and if I grab the properties here, if you see here, it is maxstop set to 1 here. If you see, non-parallel plan reason. So it is not running parallelly. It is only using one thread. So that's how you can use it. But what if you wanted to use multiple query hints? Can you do that? Of course, you can do that by using the same store procedure, but by using the comma instead of like removing the recompile, just add the other hint. By using the comma, just add another hint. That will work. So now I would like to use both of them, and I would like to execute, and I will clear out the cache again, and I will run the same executions now. Let's see if both of them will take effect. Now, if you see, the first one, clustered index scan, next time it recompiled, as well as it used the max stop. If you see, it will definitely use the max stop one, max stop set to 1. So in that way, you can actually go ahead and take the advantage of the query store hints. And if you observe here, we are not touching the query itself. Like, to use any hints, we did not touch the code itself, but all we did was like we used this particular store procedure and we use the query ID itself and then add the options here, but we never touch the code itself. So let's say your Power BI refresh or something, it is running in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. in the morning. It executed like for 40 minutes, but nothing has happened and query timeout, and then that caused the DBA will get a on call because this is such a important report. It needs to be available in the morning. So um, that refreshed failed. So what you will do, like you will create a ticket, or like you will on call DBA. You need to call on call DBA, and they will get a call in middle of the night at 2 a.m. in the morning, and we don't have any freaking clue why that particular refresh has failed, and we were like looking around. And if you have query store, right, they can go back and see why it has failed, and then but then the query that was running in the Power BI, we are not supposed to touch the query. We are not allowed to touch the query, like due to many reasons, because in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. in the morning, we are not supposed to call anybody, like a leadership role or something, like manager or somebody who is responsible for the report. They do not want to change any code because they are already scared. Like, why is it failing in the production when the lower environments are fine, and we don't want to change any code in the production when we are not testing on the lower environments, right? So what we have to do in that situation, right? As a DBA, we are not allowed to change the code. So by using the query store without changing the code, by using the query hints, like query store query hints, We don't even have to touch the code. All we can do is like we'll find the query ID for the query that you are running, and then we'll go ahead and do the recompile and like what all options we want, we'll place it and then we'll run and we will see if the query will refresh properly. So that is one of the advantage we have by using the query store hints. Now you can also clear out if you are having, if you think like no, we don't want any more query hints. You can also clear the hints by using sp query store clear hints and give the query ID of that store procedure and then execute. And if you execute it, you can see you don't see queries, any query hints on that query ID. So that's how you can use the query hints. But like if you like when I mentioned like query hints, when you are like not using the comma and appending the query hints additionally, but then you are overwriting it. When you overwrite, right, you will lose the history of what all query hints you used in the past. Now, if that is the case, now if some other query hint was working fine and now you can't track it back. So in that case, what we can do is like SQL Server is will not track that. All it will do is it will overwrite that, but it will not track that. Now, if you want that information, then you can use something known as extended events. You can talk to the DBA and then make sure all of these hints are like captured as a history of the information. Even though they overwrite, they still have captured the history of it. So that is one of the other thing you need to remember. Now let me go back to my slides again to talk about the next latest features. So one of the other features, like additional features we have in SQL Server 2022 is IQP features, intelligent query processing features. These are all like used for the boosting the performance of your queries. You do not have to do anything. Um, so all that you need to do is making sure your database is up to date. Compatibility mode of the database is SQL Server 2022. So if you see your screen here, if you see here, you need to focus more on the blue ones instead of the sea green color or the white color, because those are the old versions of like IQP features, but the highlighted blue ones uh, are for the SQL Server 2022. So in this session, we are going to talk about like parameter sensitive plan optimization and degree of parallelisms and cardinality estimate feedback and all of that. So let's go ahead and see before beginning, right? You do not have to do any code changes. Like I said, you need to make sure the compatibility level of the database is SQL Server 2022. And these all IQP features are like friends, they can work together, but not like if one IQP features is working, the other features are in rest, right? They can work together. So multiple IQP features can act together on your query. And um, because you are in the SQL Server 2022 compatibility mode and all of these features will be activated automatically, you can see the performance boost as well. And we have talked about a couple of them before, but like query store is enabled by default, like I talked. And if you are using um, if you are using like the high availability scenario, like high availability where like you are using the um, secondary replicas um, to your databases, then like for example, most of the time, if you are using the high availability and high availability on your databases, most of the time database administrators will ask you to use the read only copy of the database for your reports and never never the primary database, because most of the time you just retrieve the data. So we are highly we highly suggest you to do the read-only replica. But the thing is, like when you use the read-only replica before SQL Server 2022, and if you have query store enabled on your primary database, then um, all the activity is captured on that primary replica of the database, but not the secondary read-only copy. Now, How about like you developers want to see the data, like want to see all of your queries that you are running in the query store, then it was not available before SQL Server 2022. But from SQL Server 2022, uh, what the advancement is like when you enable the query store on the primary replica of the database, it will you have the ability to enable the query store on the secondary replica as well, but the data will be transferred over to the primary replica, and you can see the data on the primary replica of the database. So you have that option. It's still in the preview phase. It's not generally available, but then like you can test it out. And all of the rest of the features that you are seeing here, i have uh, I have talked about it, like not described each of the features, but apart from the parameter sensitive plan optimization, rest all them needs a query store. Now let's talk about the PSP optimization, which is also known as parameter sensitive plan optimization. Um, it doesn't require the query store to be turned on, and there is something known as dispatcher and variant plans that you need to remember when we talk about PSP optimization. Now let's see that with an example, right? So let's say like in our previous demo, we have seen a store procedure which have like two two different parameters which are very sensitive. With one parameter, we have seen some 360,000 records, and with the other parameter, we have seen just 360 records, right? That means like that particular store procedure and those parameters are really sensitive. Now let's say we are running such kind of query store onto the SQL Server 2022, and we have our compatibility mode which is changed to 2022, right? Now how will that query will work, right, in SQL Server 2022? Now you run the query, and inside the SQL engine, because it is SQL Server 2022, there is something known as dispatcher plan will get activated. Now, this dispatcher plan is nothing but it will save the logic of like how it should run, how the particular query with that particular parameter should run. Now, that is kind of like a logical area where it saves all the logic. And inside that logic, it says like if this particular parameter is producing 360,000 records, then go ahead and use this particular plan. I'm going to build a new plan for that particular parameter, and I'm going to save that plan in the cache. Now, the next time you run, if you are running a parameter value which is 3, which just produced 360 records, now I'll not run the previous plan, but I'll run a new plan which requires just small amount of resources, and I'm going to save that new plan inside the cache as well. Previously, before SQL Server 2022, no matter how many parameters you have, only one plan will be saved inside the cache. But with SQL Server 2022, they decided hmm, the customer's data is very much like it's a broaden, like they have uh, they have differences in their number of records they are receiving. So it's not that linear fashion, right, that all the parameters will produce the same amount of records. But there are some outliers, and we have the skew in the data. So in that phase, like in that situation, they decided to save up till 3 execution plans inside the cache. So what is the benefit of it, right? Since it sees the logic inside this dispatcher plan, and it will show us the area to go and choose the plan based upon the parameter value. It is easy not to investigate like why the plan has changed, because there are already 3 plans saved in the cache. It can choose whatever plan it uh, it decides to choose. And there is performance benefit, because now parameter sensitive problem has gone away, because multiple plans are saved now. It will go ahead and choose the plan which is benefit to it. So that's the one with the parameter sensitive plan. So the dispatcher plan is nothing but having the logic in it, where it have to go, what kind of plan it have to choose, and the variant is nothing but the execution plan itself. Now let me go ahead and show you the demo of how this will work in real time scenario. Um, this is very beautiful to watch, right? So I'm connected to SQL Server 2022. So we are using a Stack Overflow database. Now this option like doesn't require the query store, but it doesn't require the query store, so we don't have to do that. Now what I will do is alter database scope configuration, set parameter sensitive plan optimization to be turned on. Again, this database, I think it is already in the SQL Server 2022. Let's see. Let's see the options. Now, if you see, the database compatibility level is 2022 already, so we are good. And when we turn 2022 on, it should automatically enable the parameter sensitive plan optimization. But I'm just showing you how we can actually enable it by using the T-SQL. Alter database scope configuration, set parameter sensitive plan optimization to turn on. And it didn't turn like it will be turned on, but I need to run it on the database, right? And then what I will do is compatibility mode is already set to 16. And then now I'll create a very simple store procedure. If you see, all it is checking is if it have the store procedure, it will drop it and recreate it. Select star from users where reputation is equal to reputation. Order by display name. That's all it does. And I executed that. And now what I will do is, if you see here, we are searching on the reputation column, right? Now what we wanted to grab, we wanted to grab certain parameters which will produce wide difference of results. Now, how do I do that? Like to test it, I will just go ahead and see the statistics of the column reputation by running this query. So this statistic will actually show the flow of the data. What is the skew of the data inside my table, right? In that column, like reputation, it will show the reputation column. So range high key shows like for the reputation value number 1, it will produce these many records. Now, if you hover your mouse down for the reputation ID, this one, it will only produce one record. So by using this data, I could able to grab certain what am I doing here? Yeah, by seeing the data, I grabbed some of the results. Now, if you see 5714 results, let's search for that reputation ID 5714. It should be somewhere here. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. 5714. If you see here, for the 5714, how many records we have? Just 8 records here. So if I execute that query, you'll get 8 records. In the same way, the reputation ID 1 will produce like the top one have these many records. So much change, right? The number of records that it will pull. And the same way, number 13 will produce like how many? 13 is somewhere here. Maybe it will give couple of records here. I'm trying to see if I can find 13. Um, somewhere it should be here. That's fine. Like 13 is here. If you see here, it will only produce 26,955. Now you might be having like, how did you see this? This is a like for every single column in your table. Like if you are running a query and you're running the query for the first time and you're searching on certain column, right? It will always create a statistic on that particular column automatically. You don't have to do anything. So this is like an internal information that the SQL Server will trust and it will use, known as statistics. And you do not have to know all of it, but then it is nice to know, like uh, based upon the values that you are providing, based upon your um, reputation value you are providing, you can see the statistics to see actually how many records we might pull up. Like we can show it will show when you execute the query. Now I'll go ahead, and that's how I grabbed the IDs, reputation IDs, to create my demos, so that I can show you how this actually works. So now I'm going ahead and running this store procedure with three different parameters, and I'm going 3 times, 2 times, and 3 times. Go three meaning like it will run 3 times, right? So I'm executing all of them, enabling the actual execution plan on, executing the query, and if you see the executions, the first one will only produce 8 records. If you see here, only 8 records. So if you see the execution plan, it choose index seek and key lookup 3 times. But then the second one, the second execution, which is like too many records, it choose clustered index scan. Now, what we can observe here is it is using multiple plans. If you see, before SQL Server 2022, the first execution, it creates a plan, and the next execution, no matter what parameter you use, it will always choose a plan in the cache. But now it is using multiple plans, if you see, right? Now let's go ahead and see now how many plans are there in my plan cache. Now, if you execute this, which you are querying the plan cache itself, now you'll see 3 plans, like 3, 2, 3. We have executed the use counts these many times. And if you see here, there are 2 plans that got generated. The ID, like if you see, these are the plan handles that got generated, right? Three different plans. The last two look the same, but then they have a different plan handle. So these are the plans that got generated and saved in the cache. Now, if I scroll down, and if I see if I wanted to see more information on it, I'll execute this query. And then if you see, the query plan is a simple store procedure, right? So they have the query hash, the same query hash. So if you see forget about this one, because this exact one is the query I just executed. But the store procedure that we executed 3 times with 3 different parameters, they all have same query hash, because it's the same query, right? It's the same store procedure, but the plan hash is different. If you observe here, the the this one and this one got the same plan hash, but this one is different. Now, if you scroll your mouse over here, you can also see the plans that got used. Now, let me go to the query. And if you want to see like how the variant will look like, variant as well as dispatcher plan will look like, let me execute this query to show you how it looks like. No, these both are same, so I'll run the latest one. So if I execute that one, now if you see the results, dispatcher plan is nothing but it have the logic in it, and query variant is nothing but the query plan itself, right? So dispatcher plan. Now, if you want to see the dispatcher plan, you scroll your mouse over here and see how the dispatcher plan looks like. Now it says multiple plans. Now it doesn't give us much information, but when you see it has multiple plans in it, that's how you know like the dispatcher plan contains multiple plans. Based upon the parameter value, it will go ahead and choose which execution it wanted to choose. Now that is PSP optimization, how it will work. Now I'll go back to my slides again, and then let's move on to the different feature now. Memory grant feedback and memory grant feedback persistence. Now, anytime SQL Server query is executed on SQL Server, the first thing that it happens is like it will go ahead and do some transformation phases, and it will pull um, some number of execution plans that it can create to that particular query. And based upon the statistics that we see, did you observe like I have shown you a table where like based upon the column value, you get those number of records that is known as statistics. Now, based upon those statistics values on the columns where you are using in your query, like mostly those columns will be like if you're searching on something in the where clause, those column statistics will be checked here. And then based upon the cardinality estimates, it will estimate how many records it might pull based upon the parameter value you searched on, and then it will it will search like which plan will be better, and based upon the lowest cost one, meaning like which execution plan might take lower CPU memory, that will be the winner and that will be saved inside the plan cache. And that is the internal of how the plan gets generated and saved inside the plan cache. Now, what will happen during the execution phase? That exact plan inside the cache will be pulled and will be used for the execution. Now, before going into the execution phase, the required memory will be granted to that plan to use and to execute the results. Now, then it will go to the execution phase. Now, what if this particular thing goes wrong? What if the estimates, the statistics that I showed you a couple of minutes ago, what if the estimates of how many records it will pull for that column are wrong? Like, what if the statistics are not properly updated and they are out of date? Then that will mm, actually cause the wrong plan to be chosen. And when it goes to the execution phase, the wrong memory grant will be allocated for that query. Because let's say the statistics, the outdated statistics is saying like, hey, for this particular reputation ID, we will only get 5 records. But then in actuality, when you execute, it will create 5 million records. Since your statistics are out of date and your DBA did not do right job to update those statistics, they are out of date, right? So since they are out of date, the memory grant is allocated is very, very slow. Now your report keeps on running and it will throw an error and all sort of bad things will happen. The query execution have problem. So the next time you see your Power BI report not working properly and you have to contact the DBA, just check with them like, hey, whether the statistics are up to date on the database. You need to make sure whether your all the tables that you are using in your query, whether the statistics are already updated on those tables. You can check that. So memory grant is really important because based upon your statistics, updated statistics, a memory grant is allocated. So um, the main goal of the memory grant feedback option is like it will always make sure it won't hit the disk, because when your statistics are stale, the memory grants are allocated less. SQL Server doesn't know what to do. It will get like a hiccup during the execution and it don't know what to do. So it have to sort the data. If you are using like order by or something like that, it will have to sort the data in the tempdb. Now it will use the tempdb as a trash can to throw in all the data in the tempdb and like do all the sort of sorting in there, which will take more time to execute and that will cause a problem. So in SQL Server 2017, memory grant feedback is only available for the bash mode, but in 2019, it is also available in row mode. But in SQL Server 2022, the improvements are like whenever you do the failover, right? If you are using the secondary replica or like if you restart the SQL Server, all of this feedback, the memory grant feedback that is being collected will be saved inside the query store, because this feature uses the query store, right? So it will capture all of the feedback of like what memory grants are being used by different queries. It will collect the data over time and then it will make the adjustments of like how much memory grant should I allocate for this query, because as an average the last 10 executions use this much memory. Now let me go ahead and allocate this much. So it will always make sure it will not spill the data into the tempdb, so that all the sorts will happen in the outside of the tempdb. Now, how the query store, like, sorry, how the memory grant feedback worked before 2022. Don't get confused by looking at the this complicated picture out here, but then just listen to my words. Like before SQL Server 2022, memory grant feedback feature was there, but it used to always look for the last execution only, just one execution. Now, if the last execution if the last execution used like only 5 MB of data, and then the next execution, it will always use that 5 MB. No matter how much it requires, it will always use that 5 MB, which is not good, right? The current execution requires more memory, but since it is always pointing to the last feedback, it make a mess, and like it will go up and down and up and down. It couldn't allocate proper memory. It is always looking at the past execution. Sometime during those executions, memory grant feedback will give up and it will shut down of itself, which is not good. So when we are in SQL Server 2022, what it does is it will not collect the last feedback only. Um, it will collect the feedback over time using the query store. It will make an average out of it, and then it will allocate the memory grant feedback, and so that your queries will get enough amount of memory so that they doesn't have to spill to disk, right? And it will persist on restarts. It will persist the feedback even you do the failover to the secondary replica. Now the secondary replica will become the primary replica, and primary will become secondary when you failover, which is like a high availability scenario. So highly suggested to always use the read-only copy of the database for the Power BI reports. And the next one is cardinality estimate. Now, if you remember correctly, cardinality estimate is nothing but the statistics, right? SQL Server always trust the statistics. So the cardinality estimate is important for the memory grant feedback, and it is also very, very important to for the SQL Server to decide how much memory it have to allocate for the SQL Server, how much CPU it have to allocate to run your query, right? So there are certain techniques that I'm not going in depth to talk here, but there is something known as predicate independence versus correlation. Like for example, you have a query that you are where you are running your Power BI, and you have a predicate, you are searching on a predicate. Like for example, select star from person's address where state is equal to Kentucky and then zip code is something. Um, so if you observe correctly that query, the state and the zip code have the correlation, right? But if there is a correlation that way, the the execution plan can, like the SQL Server can never get the proper estimates for both of them together. So what it will do is like it will always move back to the predicate independence. There is a correlation between those two columns, but to get that cardinality estimates properly from the tables, it will always move back to the default option, which is a predicate independence. It will treat both of them differently, like the state, which is Kentucky, and the zip code is this much, but it will choose like they do not have the correlation between each other. Like it will treat them completely differently, predicate independence, and then grab the cardinality estimates of them both, right? And then containment. Containment is nothing but if you have multiple joins in your queries, that will it will also choose like what is the what is the relationship in between the joins, and then do the cardinality estimates based upon that. And the row goal, like what is the predicted number of rows that it can pull from those statistics value. Those are the three cardinality estimate techniques that it will use. So basically what it does is this particular cardinality estimate feedback option, whenever you run your queries, it doesn't work on all of your queries. That query that you are running should be actually eligible to for this feedback, right? For these estimates. So there should be like a 10x difference between your estimates versus actuals. Like if your estimate is saying 10 rows will come out, but you are when you actually execute the query, you are getting 1,000 records, right? Then there is 10x difference. In that particular scenario, it will treat that query to be actually identified, and then it will go ahead and verify, capture the feedback over time, and then once it gets the proper estimate, it will go ahead and use the query hint method to fix the problem. Like query hints, the query store query hints that we talked about, it will go ahead and force the plan. It will go ahead and use the query hints to fix the problem automatically for you. All you have to do is make sure like your database is in SQL Server 2022 mode, and only the queries that are repeated all the time will be used for this feedback, and it will verify once it capture the feedback, and then only it will go ahead and use the query store hints. It will force the query store hints. DOP feedback, degree of parallelism feedback. Whenever your queries are running using um, using so many cores, right? Degree of parallelism, it is using the parallelism, multiple threads to run your queries, and your query doesn't require those many threads to run. This DOP feedback will capture all the information of your queries. It will make sure your queries are even eligible to do that, and then capture the information over time, save the data in the query store, and then once it decide, once it validates, it will go ahead and decrease the parallelism value up till 4. It can't go below that, but it will always make sure your queries are using proper DOP value and not higher value, right? It can't take it higher, but it will always make sure it is lowering the value but not higher. So we covered all of the latest and greatest features in SQL Server 2022, especially through the lens of like IQP features. And I followed this particular references to prepare my presentation. And I really forgot to stop in between and ask questions. I really apologize. And thank you, Michael, for giving me this opportunity to present for your user group. And sorry, I'll give you some time to ask me any questions you have. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. And
I'm really sorry. I just
no,
forgot.
no.
I was in the
I was
flow.
watching too. I was watching, and I've even asked them too if there any questions. But so far, no questions yet from the
Okay.
audience. I have got a question. So I've always noticed that there are some restrictions on the Azure SQL. So there are some of all these things that on the on-prem SQL Server, all those options come up, all those tuning can be done. But then once it is the Azure SQL, those options are not there. And I just wanted to confirm all of what you've shown us. Uh, are there those ones that for sure when it's Azure SQL, we won't be able to do them, or the approach will be different, or we just need to be aware that, okay, for Azure SQL, it might be different a bit.
In the good question. So this set of features that I described is in SQL Server 2022. But if you are using the Azure SQL database, right? Like these features are automatically enabled in there. First, what they do is they will test it on Azure SQL database, and if everything is working fine, then they will bring out to the on-prem SQL servers. So,
Oh,
for example, the query store hints is available on Azure SQL. First, they tested that on Azure SQL, and it worked perfectly fine. And then they implemented that on on-prem SQL Server. And there is one more thing was like automated plan correction, where I mentioned like the advanced feature in Query Store, like you do not have to force any query plans, but it will automatically monitor your queries, and it will always make sure the last good plan is
yeah,
always forced. The one that I described a couple of
yeah, I
minutes ago,
remember
that is enabled by
by
default in Azure
default.
SQL.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know because I always felt like that somehow Microsoft ties our hand when we're using the Azure SQL. But what you said has opened my mind to see that actually they handle all of those. So they enable all of these features already for the Azure SQL. And
Yes.
it's nice to now understand from that angle. Great, great. So looking at any other question, then I was able to check the count. We got 20 people. So, so that in case I forget to tell you via email, so you can
Yeah,
have it
sure.
down. We got 20 people in the session. Is there something else you told me to get you? Oh, I already told you that one is Nigerian. Okay, all right. So if there's any other thing, I can always get you. but we got
Yeah.
20 people. And so we've got two general questions we ask every special presenter we bring. So while I wait, if anybody has asked you questions, I can pull up those two questions. So one is, we would like to hear about your journey, and for you, I'm sure it's across different industries, different continents, different. So as much as you can tell us so that we will be motivated to, we will appreciate. So how did you get into this whole server data platform, even your MVP journey? Like, were you already doing SQL from age 2 or from your mother's womb, or you were doing it, in heaven or wherever you are before you came to earth? Like, we want to know from as far back as you can share with us, and because we always find it exciting
Oh,
and sometimes motivating.
that's so nice you asked this question, because most of the times organizers doesn't ask these kind of questions. They just say like, "Hey, thank you, no more questions, and have a great day." That's all they have. But then I really like the way you asked, Michael. Thank you so much for asking. Mine is like a challenging journey. Like you will not even think that I have that journey, right? So. In the previous company where I worked, I faced harassment, and I'm not ashamed of saying that. I'm not scared to say that because I'm a victim. So I had that harassment where like my manager harassed me for at least 5 years, and he pulled in all of the projects that I have. He didn't like me being technically sound. He didn't want me to tell him like if he wanted to do something, and if I had to correct him, he didn't like it because his ego was hurt. So what he does was to gain a like to show the leadership on me. He just removed me from all of the projects. So I didn't have anything in my hand. I couldn't ask for it because when I asked there was no response. And that journey was actually like took place for about like 5 years. So I was totally depressed, right? I was totally depressed. I lost my confidence because I didn't have anything to do. Like all of the, he used to cancel my appointments, hospital appointments, if I have any. He used to not give me that. He used to not give me any paid any leaves if I asked. So all of the people, like he told everyone not to talk to me. So it was like a horrible kind of environment where I was working, just because I was telling him like I was correcting him and I was technically sound. So he didn't like that. So during that time, I went through depression. I didn't know what to do. I lost all of my self confidence, and I thought like there should be a way out. Like I can't be in this darkness, so I have to come out and I have to see the light again. So I thought like nobody else can give that light to me, right? I have to create that light for myself. Like I need to be my own light. So then I started. I thought like, how about I create a website where I can start writing whatever I know. I will just post it. Like I know that I do not have any projects right in hand, but that manager could able to control me within that organization. But how can he touch me or control me outside of the organization, right? How can he stop my knowledge? So I thought like, how about I create my own website and start writing the blog posts, and no matter how small that is, right? If anybody read that post, they might think like, I already know this, but not everybody knows what you know. So I thought like it can, if it helps one person, I'm successful. So I thought like I opened my website, and then I started writing the blog post, and I opened up a Twitter account. I'm a huge fan of Brent Ozar. He's a hero in the data community, like where he had brentozar.com. I was super impressed with him. In one of his videos, he said like, "Hey, if you want to follow me on Twitter." So I opened Twitter account just to follow his posts. So that's how I started. And um, one day he posted a post on Twitter saying like, "Hey, anyone wanted to speak for the first time can actually go ahead and like apply for new stars of data, and this is the first time they are ever doing it." And that was the peak time in the pandemic, right? So everybody is virtual, and I thought like, how about I do this? Like I don't have confidence to apply for it because I'm too much scared. I'm an introvert. I thought like I couldn't speak, but still, I something in me said like you need to do this. You need to challenge yourself, right? Step out of your comfort zone. So I submitted my abstract and hoping not to get selected. I'm really hoping not to get selected, but I got selected, which is a good thing. But but then eventually they gave me one uh, who can be my mentor, who can support me during my presentation. And that's how I started my journey. And
Wow.
I started my journey. It was 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So I started doing that eventually. Like I loved it. So
Wow.
I loved speaking because the thing is like not about ego. This is not about ego, right? I do not have ego. But the thing is like all I wanted from speaking is I wanted to gain back my confidence. All I wanted is like to gain back my confidence, which I lost there, right?
Yeah.
So as I'm speaking, as people are gaining knowledge from my teaching, they actually approach me and saying like, hey, thank you for
Yeah.
taking your time, and thank you for teaching us. Like you do not get anything by spending this much of time and teaching us, but you're selfless, right? But
Yeah.
no, I'm selfish in a way that I am getting back my confidence, by doing all of these organizing things. I'm I'm kind of a selfish person because that is giving me the confidence I need. So the more I do, the better I gain back my confidence. So in that process, I started organizing the conferences. I started organizing the user group sessions. I started speaking about women in technology because I don't want any other women
Yeah.
to go through the same phase. So I gave some tips and tricks for them to stand up for themselves because I didn't stand up for myself for so long,
Yeah.
until it was very bad, So I really like this speaking, and throughout my journey, I also helped other women to do the same. And here I am, like Microsoft recognized me. It is a
Yeah.
very good gesture of them, but even if I do not have MVP in my hand, I will still do this. I will still do this.
So, wow, man, yeah, I don't know if you see your screen, but if you see a lot of people, they were giving the heart emoji, the heart love emoji that
Oh,
they really found your story, your journey very inspiring. And wow, 5 years is
oh
a lot
yeah.
of time.
Oh
Wow,
yeah. I
I'm
mean,
glad you are not the suicidal person. That's enough for some people actually to do something drastic.
yeah,
Wow.
I mean, please, I would like to tell one thing to all the audience who are listening
Yeah.
to me. Just one thing, do not think like you are anything less than the other person. Like if you are seeing a
Yeah.
celebrity out there on the stage, or like if you went to an event or an organizer as an audience and you see someone on the stage and speaking, right? Just think like you are nothing less than them, and you might be so much more than them because you are in the audience mode. Do not think like you are anything less than any person, right? The speaker who is speaking might have gone through a lot
That's
behind the
true.
scenes. Like to be on the stage, they might have gone through depression. And they might have chosen speaking as a way to come out of that depression. You understand? Like it's
Yeah.
not that easy to stand on the stage and speak in front of so much people. Even
Yeah.
like we also get backslashes, right? In the feedback, people will
Yeah,
yell,
that's true.
shout, and like yell, what did you even spoke? I mean, what is your accent? I don't like your accent. We also see the hatred comments. Like we have to pass through that. Like we have to go
Yeah.
beyond the thought and like open up for life to even be on that stage. So do first thing, do not think you are anything less than anyone. And if you want to start your journey, and do not think tomorrow I will do that, day after tomorrow I will do it now, because
Now,
that is the only thing we have, right?
that's true.
Like yeah, that is the only thing we have. Past and future is all illusion. Like I do trust that one. And yeah, as much as I can, I tell this all the time to my friends, and like to anyone who approach me asking for the support. I will always tell them that please do not think you are anything less than anyone.
Oh, thank you. In fact, I'm going to ask you to give us the link. I don't know who you accept, but anyway, the link for the women in tech so we can share and allow
Oh,
people who are also women who, they might benefit from these resources and these
oh
sessions you
yes.
have. So if you can
Um,
share the
I
link in the chat.
have I have
Okay.
my profile,
Web.
GitHub profile.
Oh, okay. I can go grab even your website. I
Yeah,
shared the
GitHub
website.
profile, and I have the link readily in place, so I can share it with
Okay.
you.
Okay, great.
Let me share real quick. Mm,
Okay. But the one I also need is the Women in Tech community. I think it's an online community, right? User group.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one.
Can women from Africa to join?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let me great. So I've seen what you shared. But I was also asking about your user group, the Women in Technology, the one where
Oh
you
yeah.
help coach women. Can people from Africa join it? Are
Oh,
they user?
definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
please
You
share.
want me
Yeah,
to share the link right now, or like
yes.
okay, okay.
Or how do you prefer? If you give me, I can maybe give only to people that are women that needs it in our community. Or if you share it, I can also directly share it to them
Oh yeah,
because
I
I
can.
believe that someone who is facing something similar will
Oh
appreciate to
yeah.
hear from other people who have passed through it, and even those who are probably not even facing something that big, but also everybody needs a little push every now and then. So it's
Oh
always
yes.
good when
And
they are
also
part of the community.
let me
Yeah.
give you the link of um
Okay.
data platform diversity, equity, inclusion group, because we
Yes.
encourage speakers worldwide. Um,
Perfect. Great.
I can give you that link as well so that you can join. Yeah, this is the one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, this is a group, and
Perfect. Great. Gonna share it, and the
yeah, I
more
will share.
we the more we can get people to take advantage from these amazing resources and community that you already uh,
Yeah, I mean like
provide, the better. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I will share this, and I will also share one more
Okay,
thing.
great.
Publicly, we have women in the development sector who need it, please. Yeah, and one more thing which is really
Yes.
important, we have like Azure data. If you are seeing my screen here,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yes, I
you
see
know,
it.
we have a meetup groups like this.
Oh,
Join the Azure data community. We have
yes.
see 135 groups
Oh, awesome.
across the world from 37 countries, and most of them are virtual. So if you can see the
Perfect.
graph,
All
these are
around the
all the
world.
around the world, and look at the members. 123, 1 lakh
Whoa.
23. So, and 135 groups, 37 countries. So, all you can do is you can go ahead and search all of these like one
Yeah.
by one, and you can go ahead and join. Like,
Yeah.
nobody will reject you. I'm pretty much sure nobody will reject you. Just I will
So
share this link, and
perfect.
you can also search from your search here from your
Okay.
place if you want to go
Yeah.
in person,
For
right? But then
oh, makes sense.
yeah, as a woman, I highly encourage everybody. Like, as a woman, it is very hard for me to travel, right? But why do you have to travel when you have
And you
so
can join
many?
virtually.
And then if you can search Power BI, you get a lot of user groups. Like in Power
Oh,
BI, you get plenty of user groups, and everything is virtual. So you can
awesome.
go ahead and like if you see that like streaming with Microsoft Fabric, oh my God, I like every day you can have one meeting, if you wanted to join. Like I will share this screen.
Oh,
I
thanks. Thank
highly
you.
suggest everybody to go ahead and look into it and become a part of Meetup. Just open up a Meetup
Yes.
account, which is free, absolutely
Yeah,
free,
it's free. Yes.
and you can go ahead and search for the user group. I was like, when I started speaking, right? I was like clicking on everything. I was joining everything and asking them, hey, can I speak at your user group? And they were like, wow, yeah, welcome. And
Oh,
like,
great.
and if anybody have any questions later, I would love to help you. Like, if you have any questions on like if you wanted to speak and if you want someone to take you to the another step, please do not hesitate to contact me. I have a contact who can support you, and like we can also set up a moderate like a mentor for you if
Wow,
you have a
wow.
Power BI topic. If you have a Power
Oh,
BI topic, I can hook you up with a different MVP who is especially like their technical expertise in Power BI. We can set up that.
wow.
And then we can take it to the next step. Like speaking gives you confidence, so why
Yeah.
not try, right?
Wow. Thank you very much. I'm again sharing all your social media contact that I have so that people can also follow you and always be, aware of all these amazing things you're doing. Wow. This is
Yeah.
amazing. There's one more question, if you don't mind. I know you've answered it partially because you've started telling us how we can be better and, how to approach the tech to learning and sharing and never thinking like we can't do it, like not just waiting for, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm going to wait for next week, next year, So I know you've helped a bit with that answer, but the last question is that for someone who is new, say I'm just starting my own journey now. I am not good in, database administration. I have an interest. I've started to take some classes, but I'm still confused on how to go about it in a structured way that I can say, okay, if I follow these steps for the next couple of months, then for sure I will be very good to take a job and add value and begin to improve on the job. So if there's someone like that amongst us, what would be your advice to somebody who, wants some clarity on the right way to become a professional in DBA?
That's a very good question. Like, I will give an overview answer, not specifically to a DBA, but let's say because most of the people here are coming from the Power BI background, let's talk about Power BI, right? Now, a new graduate will come out and say, like, hey, I wanted to know analytics, I wanted to learn Power BI, and I want to become a Power BI analyst or like developer. What they can do, right? So I 100% believe on basics, right? People will treat basics as like, that's easy. Like even the most experienced ones, if they do not have a proper foundation of basics, we will crumble as we move forward because we get as we are learning. It's like going to a middle school when you don't even know how to read a word, right? So it's like it becomes very difficult. So as a starter, it is like the best time for you to get that proper foundation, the rock solid foundation on the basics. Once you understand the basics, then you can easily build the castle on the top of it. But if the foundation is not stable, no matter even if you build the beautiful castle, it will crumble in the later down the road. Meaning like if you want to grow in your career, having foundations will give you that confidence in the teams. Whenever somebody is having questions, you could able to answer it very fluently and confidently, and by depending upon those basics, you can trace back the dots to see where your queries or like why something is failing. By looking back, you can figure that out. So if you are a SQL professional, if you want to go through the SQL journey, then you need to be standard, and like you need to have that foundation on the SQL basics. Like I have couple of resources I always share with my colleagues, and like we have more of intern people who join in our company. So they usually come to me, and because my manager will always point them to me, Deepthi will share all the resources. Just go to her, and like I have a already predefined email where I will just forward it to everybody, because like if you wanted to become a SQL professional, I have these resources. And like even in Microsoft, right? Microsoft offers like free certification. So many people doesn't know this, but if you go to the Microsoft website, I can also share you that link. Like any examination, if you want to go through the fundamentals, they have a free certification course. Like they do the training all year on all the topics of fundamentals, and then after the completing the fundamentals, they will give you a code. That code you can use for 100% refund, right? You can take the examination for free, and based upon that you can build your next sort of your wherever you want to go. On the top of it you can actually build. So if you want to go to Azure, if you want to take the Azure, we have several channels, very great channels. Like for example, John Saville is from YouTube. He will start with basics, right? Anything foundation like AZ900 is the basic you can start with Azure SQL, or like Azure, learning Azure as a whole. So AZ900, you can start from there and then build on the top of it. But all the time I say like go back to basics. Like even if I get confused, I go back to basics. So I highly suggest you to learn the basics. If you are going to Power BI, learn the Power BI basics. Like uh, basics all the way to SSRS, right? Because they have been built on the top of it, the Power BI and all the like, fabric is depending upon the Power BI and all the rest of the other things as well. It's like a central stage, right? So do not directly go to the fabric. Like go back a little bit, step back and learn the basics first. So that is my suggestion.
Well, I was just trying to get the link to some of what I saw you say. So I'm pasting some. Wow, thanks a lot. So a lot of people are really thankful for this generous share of knowledge. Not just even the SQL we've learned from you, but these life lessons and approach to learning and taking mastery of one's career. And confidence. That's one thing that many people also struggle with, and you've helped us. So thank you very, very much. I know you have other things to go do today, but we are very grateful for your time. We are thankful for how generous and very patiently you've shared with us your learning, your journey, your experience, and advice too, and the community work you do. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot
Yeah.
you're into. Oh, well,
One more thing
wow.
is like I shared a resource. The last one is very important because
Okay.
um, in that link you will find, if you can open that link, all the audience, if you can open that
Yes.
link, I will show you on my screen here. This one, like Microsoft Virtual Training Days.
Ah,
Like if you can see my screen, go
yes,
to the
yes.
last link from that my website, Microsoft Virtual Training Days. If you click on that, right? Um, you can go ahead and search for all the basics like
Wow.
fundamental. Like if you click on register now, right, it will ask you like what sort of like event type
Oh,
is specialty or fundamental. Now if you click on fundamental, you will find all the like Microsoft Azure fundamental training day. Now you can go ahead and register, and this, like if you see the timings of the training. Now this training is totally free, and
wow.
you can also search for the job role, like what job role you want, like business analyst or like data analyst, data engineer. You can search on this. Many people doesn't know this link. It
Oh,
is like as I know, I will mostly share with all the people. And then you can also search on like skill level and all that sort of things. And all that you do is you'll go and register, and then
oh,
keep that as a calendar invite. They will also provide you the calendar invite. You'll receive the calendar invite, and then attend the training, and you'll get a free coupon for the examination.
wow.
And this all this is from Microsoft.
Free. Wow.
Yeah, it is free. It is completely free. And you also have the Power Platform. Did you see Power Platform? Like
Yes.
Microsoft Power Platform Virtual Training Day Fundamentals. Now, if anybody wants to register, I can share this with you on the chat. You can go ahead and register now. Why wait?
Wow. Already
Yeah.
going through them. Like this is a lot of like this is just why is it not so popular? Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah. I know.
amazing.
I know. I know. Right?
Oh, I'm registering for one already.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. Definitely. It's free.
Wow.
Like, why not take the advantage, right?
Oh God, thanks a lot. I'm sure we will want to bring you back. Maybe we'll let
Oh,
you rest a
definitely.
bit. Maybe next year we'll send you another invitation to have you
Definitely.
come back. But thank you very, very much. We're so grateful for this
Anytime.
value. In fact, we've gotten more value from this last part than, the very one that, you took a lot more time to even explain. This part that you've done out of being impromptu questions to you. I can see that a lot of people are surprised that I can get free trainings, I can
Oh,
get all these
definitely.
these resources for free. So thank you very, very much.
No
And
problem.
I'm glad that a lot of people who were able to join were able to wait till the end to at least benefit from these. Those who had to go do something else will find a way to also inform them. I think they will see it in the chat, so they will figure out that these are some of the resources you've shared. So thank you very much. And we're grateful. I will have to let you go now. And
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody in the house, please just maybe do a thumbs up or a sign of appreciation to Deepthi. This is amazing. Like, we need to
Thank you.
appreciate her for this amazing
Please
and
connect
generous
with me on
share.
LinkedIn. Yeah, so that you can see what all I'm sharing, and then I'll share these sort of resources and like my upcoming webinars, free webinars. So
Oh,
you'll come to know that. Yeah, yeah.
oh, wow. Great.
You all
Thank you
have
very
it.
much.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
Thank you for
great.
having me today.
Yes. So have a wonderful week ahead. And to everyone,
Thank you.
bye. Thank you
Thank you.
all.
Bye bye. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.